Hey there everybody, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, I am going to talk about how to base large miniatures. So in my previous basing guides that I've done, I showed you guys some very easy ways that you can get your infantry bases done using the Geek Gaming Scenics Base Ready range, as well as pigment powders and everything. But large miniatures actually introduce a new problem in that there's a lot of space on the base that when you leave that kind of empty, it doesn't really look so good. So let's take a look at an example, the Tyranid Tyrannifex. So here you can see, the miniature is painted beautifully. This is straight off of the GW website. So, it's a heavy metal paint job. But as you spin this around, you see all of this empty space underneath the model that just doesn't look that great. So it's an opportunity for you to use a little artistic expression, fill in that space with some cool stuff, and I'm going to show you how I would tackle that, because I'm in the middle of painting Tari's Tyranids. So I've been working on all of her large monsters for a little while now, and yeah, let's just dive right into this. All right, so step one, the very first thing that I think you should do is settle on a theme. Is your army going to be primarily, based to look like they're in an urban battlefield setting, or are they going to be in a jungle? You really need to make that choice right at the beginning so that you know how to proceed going forward. So for Tari's army, I'm basing it in an urban setting where, there were some defensive barricades around and sort of defensive gear as the defenders are sort of scrambling to try and stop the Tyranids from taking over the planet. So the very next thing that I need to do is fill up that space that's on the base. And for that, I am turning to 3D printing. All right, so since I chose an urban theme, I looked through some of the files that were available online, and the first creator that I had settled on was Tixarli Factory. You can find their stuff on myminifactory.com. And the street barricade set really, really fit my theme. So you have a mixture of sandbags and sort of defensive walls. Some broken jersey barriers would look really, really good. And then the second creator, I actually found on Cult, Custom Miniature Maker, which honestly in 3D printing, they are probably one of the best value creators that are out there. Like, this video is not sponsored, but in addition to their Patreon, which is incredibly affordable, you can sign up for their email list, and they send out free models, I think, every Monday to their email list. So, like, this creator is amazing. But they have this one file set that is a collection of sort of worn rocks and boulders that I thought would look really cool, like as pieces of buildings that maybe, crumbled and got blown apart and blasted all over the battlefield. So let me fire up the desk cam and I'll show you what these prints actually look like. All right, so here are a few of the bits that I went ahead and printed out. They turned out really, really great right off of my Neptune 4 FDM printer. So just to let you guys kind of see what we're working with here. Now, some of these, because I used an FDM printer, you're going to have layer lines. It's sort of the downside of working with an FDM machine, just the way it ends up printing your model. It's laying one layer of plastic on top of the other. Now, to minimize that, I did use a 0.12 layer height instead of the standard 0.2. So that means my layer lines are a lot finer than a 0.2 millimeter miniature would have been. But there is something that you can do to combat that. So there's another creator on YouTube, Next Level Board Gaming. They run an STL store for board game products, but also wargaming terrain. And I got this tip from them and then modified it a little bit. So with their 3D prints, they will mix some PVA glue with tile grout and a little bit of water, and it makes this sort of soupy, kind of thick mixture. And you can slather that all over your 3D prints, and you get your base coat, and you fill in those layer lines and add a little bit of texture at the same time. Now, I didn't have any tile grout on hand, so I went ahead and used some of my Vallejo texture gel, and it accomplished the same exact thing. So you mix this with a little bit of PLA and water, and when you coat your piece, and then you go ahead and base coat it, all of those layer lines, for the most part, disappear. You really can't tell, and then the nice thing with this is you get that fine grit texture on there, which for an urban battlefield looks really, really good. So all that I did to get this to this level was give it a coat of this, base coat my olive drab, and then dry brushed the stonework. So that's all there is to it. Now we're ready to go ahead and get these glued down onto our bases using some super glue. All right, so we've painted our 3D prints and we got them stuck down to the bases, and so this is where we're at. I've also gone ahead and applied some Base Ready to get our texture down. So this specific mix, so Luke produces two types of city rubble. One is black and then one is sort of gray. And I mixed the two of those together just to give a little bit of variation when I put it on the bases. But as you can see here, we've started to fill in some of that space that we've got on these larger models. And the not the Tyranifex, what is this thing called? It's the other build. Turvagon, there we go. I really like this one. It's got the barricade that it's like stepping over. Looks pretty cool. And then our Screamer Killer is sort of assaulting a emplacement. Alright. So that is our first two steps done. We've got a theme. We've got our 3D prints on the base. We've started filling in that empty space, but we can go a step further. All right, so the next step, we want to tie the bases in to, the world that the miniatures live in. And for that, there's no better option than rating your bits box. So, for instance, this sprue here builds one of the shipping containers from one of the 40K terrain sets. But they come with these really cool little barrels, and then you get some scenic crates. Those would actually look very, very good on some of our bases. So I've got a couple sprues of those that I'm going to use. Then most of your Imperial infantry kits will come with weapons and sort of accessories that don't have hands attached. So like this shotgun right here, that's a perfect item. We've got this sort of, it could be a flamer tank or like an oxygen tank. That would look really cool, just kind of laying on the ground. We've got a saber that maybe somebody could have dropped. Then this is a sprue from the new field guns. For the Astra Militarum, we've got, a battery pack here that would look pretty cool. You could even take one of the spare weapons and kind of have it laying on the ground, sort of dismantled. Then another option here, this is for the new Sentinels. We've got sort of infantry kit bags that could be laying down. There's like an ammo tin here, and a more gruesome option, since we are, working with Tyranids. You could even take like half of a torso and kind of build up some rubble around it so it looks like the body's kind of buried. So you can even use, body parts from your various infantry kits that are out there. And we've got these jerry cans that are going to be really, really cool. And then this is the new Cadian sprue, I believe. In that similar vein, we could have like an arm that had been cut off and is just kind of laying there and, bleeding profusely. We've got an extra sandbag up there, some spare las rifles. So as you can see, rummaging through, your own bits box or your friend's bits box, you can get lots of really cool options. So I'm going to clip some of these out and get them painted up pretty quickly. And we'll get those stuck down on the bases and see where we're at. All right, so I prepared a little time lapse here of me getting these bits ready. Once I got everything selected, I went ahead and clipped it off of the sprue. But do notice I left a little piece of the sprue attached to some of the smaller bits just to make them easier to handle. And then I also laid some parchment paper down on my work surface. But yeah, so just went ahead, applied some brush on primer, then went ahead and applied all of my base coats to the pieces. Now remember, these are going to be sitting in the shadows underneath the model, so we're not looking for a perfect paint job here. We're really just wanting that little bit of color to shine through out of the shadows. So you can do this step pretty quickly. And also remember, you only have to paint the top sides of these pieces. All right, so with all of those bits painted, I went ahead and super glued them onto my bases. And then I also used some of these model bricks from Green Stuff World. Well, these are really cool. I don't know exactly what they're made of. I suspect it's probably either clay or plaster. But they're very easy to work with. You can super glue them. You can snap them apart really easy to make broken bricks and rubble. But I just went ahead and filled in some of that empty space that we had. And then another model from the batch. Got this crate sitting next to the rock, and then some scattered bricks laying around, and a couple of severed limbs, which we will come to later in the video. But now it is time to add some color to the base. So this black and gray texture, it's kind of plain. So we want to jazz that up a little bit. And just like in my Adeptus Titanicus basing video, we're going to use some weathering powder. So in my deepest shadows, we're going to go ahead and use some green earth. And then coming out to the outer rim of the base, we're going to use some ancient earth. And maybe around those bricks, we might add a little bit of red brick dust. So let's go ahead and get that done. Okay, so applying these weathering powders. So first off, I'm using a makeup brush. It has very soft bristles, and it's really good for spreading the powder around and kind of helping to achieve a dust effect, so that you don't have too much powder in one place. So I'm starting off with the green earth and putting that sort of in all of my shadow areas, so around the big pieces of rubble and the crates. And I'm not completely covering up all of the black gravelly under material. I want some of that to still show through in the deepest shadows. But then I'm just blending ancient earth out toward the edge of the base, as well as dusting some of the larger pieces like the sandbags with it. All right, so I went ahead and hit the weathering powders with a little pigment fixer. This particular brand is Abtalung 502. And normally, whenever I do this, I'll decant some of the liquid into a little spritzer bottle, and then I'll hold the bottle about a foot away from the mini so that the air displacement doesn't move the pigment around. But once that pigment fixer dries, you'll notice that the color goes to a more subtle, dusty look. It doesn't look so caked on as it did when we were applying it. You'll also notice that I went ahead and applied some uh, grass tufts. Specifically, I used the Army Painter Wasteland tufts and the Warlord dead tufts. Figured, on an urban battlefield, uh, you're probably going to see more weeds and so forth, things that would survive in a harsh sort of area. So the very last thing that we need to do is take care of all the little amputated bits that I used. And for that, we're just going to go to our old standby blood for the blood god. And I've already shaken this up pretty good. Now this is super thick and gloopy, which is exactly what we want, because we need to cover up that severed joint. So we're literally just going to dab this on and add kind of a pool of blood around the limb. Just so. And then we can just let this dry. So I'm going to go ahead and do my other minis, and I'm going to queue up, some roundtable footage so you guys can see the finished miniatures. All right, and here go the finished models. So this project was a lot of fun. I hope you guys learned something new from this video, and I gave you guys some ideas or maybe inspired you to, try and up your basing game on those larger miniatures. They really do give you more space to be even more creative and really, really help make your army really thematic as a whole. A lot of times with your smaller infantry miniatures, there's not a whole lot of room for you to really, you know, execute a vision, but these bigger miniatures give you that space. And it's really easy, to just put in a little bit of extra effort and really make something that, will wow your opponents and people, looking at your armies. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I'm going to let this turntable footage keep rolling, put on a little music for you guys, and I'll catch you in the next video.